In this quick tutorial, I'll be showing you how to use the MoGraph uh, module, uh, which is basically has become available to us from version 12. Prior to version 12, it could be purchased as a plugin. The MoGraph module allows us to do very complex interactivity uh, with minimal work. So let's get started. And the first thing I'm going to have to do here, I'm going to actually insert a passive object. So Cinema 4D has three different categories for objects. They're passive and active and operator objects. So the passive objects are basically these ones, and the color that they're associated with is blue. The generator objects are the ones that are green, and that they basically need a child or multiple children to perform a task. And the operator objects is basically like they could affect both. Uh, so I'm going to actually go ahead and click on the cube, and as you can see, I have a lot of different shapes that are primitive shapes that are already created for me in the library here. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a cube, and I'm going to make sure to save my file. And basically, as soon as I do that, you can see the cube um, actually right here in the object panel here. And here we notice that you have two sets of coordinate options here. So in this coordinate panel, basically I could change the size of my cube, and I could change its rotation, positioning, and so forth. But this coordinate panel is different than the one that I have in the object panel. The coordinate panel here basically is where I would actually create animation for my cube. So we have the position, the scale, and the rotation. And the way you can identify it is that next to the pin you see a small box, right? So every time you see a small box, that means that in Cinema 4D you can animate that property. So this one over here, I don't see any box, which means that I can change the position or the size or how I want it to kind of look like on the scene, but I cannot animate it using these options here. So I'm going to just keep that in mind here. Also, when I click on my cube under the basics, basically I can change its name. I can also select its visibility if I want it to be off or on, both in the editor window or in the render window, because sometimes maybe we have too many cubes, maybe there are times that I do not want to see the actual cube. So basically this is under the basic tab under the attribute panel. And if I click the coordinate, basically here is where I can actually create an animation. So the way you make an animation is basically, let's say if I want this to animate from right to left, I'm going to actually come back here, maybe just on the x-axis, click here, and maybe I'll do the rotation tool right there. And then I'll just move maybe to the 50th frame and move my box over here and change this to 180. And as you notice, the color, basically color of the box changed to yellow, which means that it recognized the change based on the two properties that I had created a keyframe for, and now I need to actually register the change. So to register the change, you hold the control key and you press the position, you hold the control key and press the rotation. So now you can see my cube is rotating both only on the x-axis, and it's just moving to a new position. So now actually I'm just going to delete that keyframe because I don't really want to animate it. I just wanted to demonstrate that, and I'm going to just move that right here. So now I'm going to actually move that back to where it was. So I'm going to register that new position there. So we're back to where we started kind of. And now I'm going to actually add a MoGraph cloner to this cube. As soon as I do that, nothing happens because, like I said before, the cloner is a generator object, which means that it needs a child or multiple children. But right now, when we look at this object panel, both of these are sitting on the same hierarchy. So in order for me to make the cube the child of the cloner, I need to grab it, hold it over on the name, and make sure that the arrow is pointing down, not that way, just pointing down. As soon as I let go, you can see that I get 3 clones, and the cube is now more inset inside of the clone. So I'm going to click back on my cloner. I'm going to click on the basic. Basically, again, this is where I can change the name. And here is basically the same options as before, where I can actually make it visible or invisible. Here is where I can actually animate my cubes here. And here, the object panel is a new one that we didn't have before. Here, it actually lets me assign different values. So for example, I can say, hey, I want these cubes to be in a radial fashion, and I can just maybe move their radius. Or I can say, make this a grid ring, and just increase the counts, and so forth. And again, for this size, I mean, if I put 100, 100, 100, you can see all my pieces are basically sized together. Whereas if I actually change this value, basically they do different things. So I'm going to actually go back to my linear path. Actually, maybe we'll do radial. And here I'm going to go back to the size, and I'm going to drop the size of my original cube to like 50, 50, 50. And I'm going to increase their counts, and I'm going to increase their radius. So it's going to look like this. I'm also going to kind of see what these look like from different planes. And I think I want them to be flat on the ground. I think this is looking pretty good. Now, what I want to do also, I want to animate the circle. So it starts with only one box, and then basically just kind of start getting repeating the boxes. So I'm going to go ahead and start angle. I'm going to keyframe my start angle. And I'm going to change this value to 360. So I automatically would get a box. I'm actually going to go back to the very beginning here. I'm going to put keyframe there. Then I'm going to go back to, let's say, frame 50. And I'm going to change this to 0. And keyframe that. I mean, just by doing these couple very basic keyframes, I kind of created a, fairly complex animation here. I can also offset my boxes, or just change the radius, and I can do that after I've made my animation. So it kind of still keeps the settings, but just basically increases the number. So now I'm actually going to go back here. There are a bunch of other options that I have, but we can talk about those later. Another option that I have here is I've animated it. I could now go ahead and add my effector, my random effector. So I'm going to make sure my clone is selected. I'm going to go to MoGraph, go to effector, and choose random. And as you notice, this one now is completely randomized. But maybe that's not what I want. Maybe I want my random effector to be maybe strength of 0 here. Actually, maybe I'll go to my frame. Was this 50? Yeah, frame 50 on my clone. Yeah. And I'm gonna now go back to my random effector on frame 50, and I'm gonna make the strength to 0. Then maybe I'll go all the way to the end of my animation, and maybe I'll just put the strength on 1000. I see what it, maybe more, maybe 5000. Just really make it just go crazy. And now, if I go back to my animation, let's see what we have here. We got this, and then we got things just going out, exploding. So just by a couple of really basic options in my MoGraph, I actually created an animation that's fairly complex. Okay, so in the next part of this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to add texture and color to this animation.